A few months ago, I did a video ranking every season 6 episode of Death Battle. People seemed to like it and I had fun making it, so I figured I'd do the same with other seasons, starting with season 5 and working backwards. This is going to be the same deal as the first one. The episodes are ordered from my least favorite to favorite. This isn't an objective worst to best list at all. So with that out of the way, let's get started.
Wayne had the ability to develop a gun, but even if he could, he never would wield it in the first place.
Black Panther vs. Batman is easily my least favorite season premiere. It's better than Samus vs. Fett, but that episode at least has some level of charm and the excuse of being the very first episode. The animation is fine, but is way slower and stiffer compared to other episodes. The death is weak. The track is forgettable. The zoo setting actively hurts the pacing of the fight by having them stop to fight animals. It's just not a standout episode. And it's made worse by the fact that this is what was meant to kick the season off. Also, the line about Batman specifically needing a kind of gun to get past the vibranium is really dumb. I didn't care for this episode when I first saw it. At time hasn't been kind to it at all.
Congrats! You beat the shit out of a fucking blind guy!
Do I hate Nightwing vs. Daredevil? Not really. There are few episodes of this show that I strongly dislike and even fewer that I hate. That being said, this episode really didn't do much for me. Don't get me wrong, the choreography was fantastic and I love that the Death Battle team was able to collaborate with Icemahawk to make something both teams were truly passionate about. But I just couldn't get into this one. Most attacks felt like they lacked impact and the death was pretty weak, which is the unfortunate drawback of live action fights since you can't actually have the actors beat the shit out of each other. The fight being another Marvel vs. DC fight makes it a good throwaway episode for them to experiment on, but it also makes me even less invested in the episode. I respect all the passion and effort that went into this episode, and I don't hate it by any means, but it really wasn't my cup of tea. Jotaro vs. Kenshiro isn't a match that stuck with me much. The track was forgettable, the sprites were blurry and some of the hand-drawn stuff looked a bit off, but the choreography was good. I liked the death and Jonathan was pretty funny. This is probably the one I have the least to say about, but oh well.
I never learned how to read!
Sora vs. Pit definitely happened. By all technicalities, this is an episode of Death Battle. I jest of course, but this is one of the most average episodes of the show in my eyes. The voice acting was fantastic, especially for Pit, and this one individual frame is truly a gift from the heavens. But other than that, this episode is just white noise to me.
I insist you give me the plan.
Raven vs. Twilight is decent enough. I don't care for the matchup, but the animation was good. I really liked the ending and the hand-drawn soul self animations were great. I don't really have much more to say on this one.
Sent half your planet to be slaughtered, and now I'm off in Oppenheimer like I did to
Doug Walker!
Oh boy, here we go. Thanos vs. Darkseid is a really good episode, but I wasn't a big fan of it personally. I thought the cosmic scale portion of the fight was great and a few other shots were really cool, but there was a lot more that didn't really work for me. I thought the first part of the fight was a bit boring. Having beings known for their cosmic scale villainy fight each other by throwing cars and running up buildings just felt really underwhelming. Then it immediately went to cosmic scale shit with no kind of gradual build up. Chuck vs. Segata is an episode that does this way better by having them go from destroying trees to mountains to planets and so on so forth. I thought the ending was fine. Thanos screaming, "Who are you?" didn't feel in character though. I hated Deadpool's inclusion in the episode. He felt really out of place. Kings of Infinity is a good track but is so unbelievably unfitting for this match, sounding like it'd fit better with something like Miles vs. Static. And this is the only episode that genuinely annoys me with how unfunny I find the jokes. I love the MCU as much as the next guy. It contains some of my favorite movies of all time, but this episode's insistence on referencing it every 5 seconds was really annoying. I don't want it to seem like I dislike this episode, because I don't. Quite the opposite. But I don't love the episode overall by any means and it's definitely one of my lesser favorite season finales.
Please, don't take it personally.
It's never been anything personal.
I liked Roshi vs. Jiraiya. The track was forgettable, the death was awkward and I wasn't big on some of the voice actors' line deliveries, but the fight was still really fun. Most of the line deliveries were still good. There were a few funny lines and I liked seeing all of both fighters' different abilities interact with each other. Not an episode I love by any means, but I still really liked it.
Is this Pizza Hut?
Doctor Strange vs. Dr. Fate started and ended really strongly, but the middle section of the fight felt really lacking. For a fight scene, it didn't feel like it had much fighting, more focusing on teleporting to different locations, which they didn't do much with. The parts where they actually fight are good though. The animation is visually nice and the track is decent. It feels like there could have been way more to this fight, but what we got was still pretty good.
You play Fortnite?
I've never loved Optimus vs. Gundam as much as most other people seem to. I don't think it's bad by any means, but it feels a lot slower and clunkier than most of Torian's episodes. The fight was fairly short and didn't excite me much in the first part, but as soon as the space section ends, the fight really picks up for me. The choreography is way better in hand-to-hand compared to their space gunfight, with Amero stabbing Optimus through the arm being one of my favorite moments in the fight. And even though I wasn't big on the first half, Optimus drop-kicking the Gundam and cutting through its shield were both great moments. And I can't believe I've never given Wings of Iron the love it deserves. What an absolutely fantastic track. So yeah, I really like this one. Just not as much as the vast majority of other people. Carnage vs. Lucy has really grown on me over time. I didn't like it much at first, but I've come around to loving it. The hand-drawn stuff is really well implemented. The animation overall is really good and the entire fight is absolutely dripping with atmosphere. Carnage lurking in the shadows, the dim lighting, the great track, the rain and the voice acting are all fantastic and give the episode a very unique feel. The death was weak and the fight never felt particularly even. And they absolutely did Carnage dirty. But the good far outweighs the bad here for me.
As they Pikachoo'd on Frank's corpse.
Frank vs. Leon is pretty great. I love how the sprites blend in with the 3D rendered backgrounds. I loved the creative uses of the wide variety of weapons in the fight and the ending was really tense. The whole thing was just really fun, though not without a few issues. The part where they both fight the zombies felt like it messed with the pace of the fight a bit, like with Batman vs. Black Panther, but at least this one was fun despite that. The death was honestly really weak and the track didn't really stand out to me until the end. But other than that, this is a really enjoyable episode. Too bad Frank West can't dodge lasers.
Crash Bandicoot, Toothless the Dragon, and Spyro the Dragon.
I really loved Crash vs. Spyro. The fight was really fun and well animated. The music was nice, albeit a bit forgettable. Spyro had a few good lines and it was cool seeing how all the different powers and weapons interacted with each other. The death was a bit weak, but this was otherwise a pretty great episode.
Ryu from Streets.
Ryu vs. Jin was Torian's last solo project on Death Battle and it was a great way to go out. It's not one of my favorite of his fights, but it's up there for sure. The choreography is fantastic. The animation is smooth and fast-paced and the track is really good. The death was admittedly pretty weak, but that's not a deal breaker at all for me. I still adore this episode. Even if it's not one of my favorite 3D fights of all time, it's easily my favorite 3D fight of the whole season.
For those of you who don't get the joke,
Ultron vs. Sigma is one of my favorite sprite battles in Death Battle history. This was pretty much the perfect matchup to follow up the 100th episode with. Something that would get people excited but not one that would overshadow the big 100th episode. The animation is really good and the voice actors do really well in their roles, with the voice actor behind Sigma even being rumored to be his original actor. But what really sells this episode for me is the custom track. It's probably my favorite of the entire season and I love it a lot. Almost as much as Mega Legends. Mario vs. Sonic is one of my top 5 favorite Death Battle episodes of all time and goes back and forth with my number 1 spot on this list. But in the end, while it just barely didn't make number 1, I still adore this episode. The animation is phenomenal. The death was great. I really like the custom track and the introduction of the Whiz and Boomstick animated segments was really good. But if this episode never introduced them, we'd never have eventually got these Lovecraftian horrors. So maybe it wasn't so great in the long run. This was a fantastic 100th episode and it's always a joy to revisit.
I'm of course talking about Samurai Jack.
Picking a number 1 for this list was incredibly difficult. My top 2 were really clear cut, but picking the one I preferred was not easy. But in the end, Jack vs. Afro just barely edges out Mario vs. Sonic for me. The animation quality in this episode may just be the best in the show's history and I adore it. The track is great. The choreography was fantastic. The comedic beats worked for me and the death is my favorite in the show's history behind only Hulk vs. Doomsday. Any complaints I could have about the fight being short or the track spoiling the outcome before the episode came out are honestly really minuscule to me. This battle is damn near perfect otherwise. I guess I have more nitpicks with this one than with Mario vs. Sonic, but I just barely chose this one due to it having a better track and a way better death in my eyes. And I really mean barely. If Mario vs. Sonic is my 5th favorite episode, then this is my 4th. But overall, I'd still call Jack vs. Afro my favorite of the season. And that's my list. Overall this season was pretty great and reached way higher high points than season 6. But I still think I prefer that one overall. My least favorite episode from that season is still one I prefer to many episodes here, and the season just had more fights I love, as well as a higher average level of quality for me. I hope you all enjoyed watching this video. Be sure to leave your own list in the comments if you disagree. I'm planning to do one of these for season 4 next. I can't wait to talk about my all-time favorite episodes like Venom vs. Bane and Smokey vs. McGruff. But joking aside, I haven't watched much from season 4 in ages, so I'm interested to see what I'll think of some of the episodes. I'm sure none of them will be as good as Jack vs. Afro, but I'm glad that episode gets the respect it deserves. It seems to be most other people's favorite as well.
I had this one at number 9.
I had it at 10.
Zero, I got it at 10.